And okay, here we go. Here we go. Live and in person. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing good.
I know when you're close together, it feels like you're too close. Like it's awkward to be that close, but in the camera, if you can get, and we know you guys know how to get close. You got 9, 10 kids, you know, who's counting? And so,
You are.
how are you guys? You doing good?
Good.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we're doing real good.
This is a treat. Here's what's going to happen now, though. Now that you're jumped on, Daniel, with your just absolute mammoth of a manly beard, I'm going to get so much flack now. People are going to be going, what is wrong with you, Samuel?
I am sure it's in there somewhere, Samuel. You just have to let it out.
Listen, honestly, I try to taunt. There's a lot of guys here that wish they could grow beards, and so I like to taunt them with the strong shadow and just let them know what could happen. And if they watch this, they could see that's what could happen. Yeah, I could own this thing, or at least I tell that myself. Maybe I'm nervous. Maybe we're bringing up some insecurities in me. Maybe I'm nervous. Could I really grow a beard?
I always tell everybody you grow whatever beard your wife will let you grow.
Hey, that's the word.
Because I've told her, I said, I'll shave it down whenever you want it. I know friends that have huge beards and their wives hate it. And I'm like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. You don't like to kiss your wife, obviously, and that's a problem. So for me, as soon as my wife does, I'm like, sick, let's go. I don't care. I'll shave my head. I'll do that. Like, it's like, whatever. You will go for it. Oh, Katie's chiming in. She's out and about, but she's chiming in on that in the comments. Okay, so when I was putting this book together, I for sure said, I got to make sure I get Daniel and Heidi's input. Not only Heidi is a legendary grammar hero, English major, dominant, and has helped me rescue many of my books to make them sound strong and all of that. But it really is not just about that. It is much more about what you guys carry together. And we grew up together, same house. We have a very rare privilege on the planet, and you did too, Heidi, of growing up in a home where mom and dad loved God, loved each other, stayed married, still together, and raised us to live our lives for God. And so there's some uniqueness in that. And so that's, I think, what also kind of birthed this to go, man, you know, and I know you guys experienced this too, like so many people just did not have a biblical parenting model, right, to them. So then unless they stumble on it, unless somebody's able to kind of challenge them on it, unless they, you know, learn, many parents just have no clue that they're not really kind of following a biblical model. They're just kind of borrowing from culture, borrowing from the local narratives going on, which we know are not really helping, right? And so I'm excited about that. But mom and dad are going to be on in a couple interviews from now. Like I said, if they can figure out how to subscribe, or to join. So I should have put an asterisk on that little ad that said, my mom and dad will be joining if they can figure it out. So anyways, I think they're going to be good. I believe in mom. She's a techie. It's going to happen. But I think.
Samuel, you just mentioned one of the quotes that we were talking about before.
Yep.
Before we hopped on, and can I just read it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Some of it might have been good and painful. We're talking about history and experiences and perspectives. But our goal as followers of Jesus is not to replicate our history, but learn the biblical model for parenting and begin to implement that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think that's huge, because I think you and I grew up as the first generation of a change.
Yep.
You and I did, Samuel, where it's like dad's dad and his mom, it was a debacle.
Yep.
Their story is its own soap opera.
Soap opera.
You can make movies.
People
I think that's the difference, is that there's a multiplying effect. When you decide to make the change, it might be a harder change than you'd expect, but when you do that and then your kids get to start on that generation like we did, right, where we started in a place of very different foundation than our dad did.
Well, and as we parent,
Yep.
we're parenting, we're making changes
Correct.
along the way. I mean,
Yeah.
we have kids in every stage of your book.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
we got lots of experimental material.
Yeah, we're launching them and getting them out of diapers at the same time. So
that is wild. I kind of said it. I wonder if people think I'm joking. How many kids you guys have? Tell everybody the names. This will be fun for everybody.
Yeah, so there's 10.
Woo!
And we say you
same
mentioned
wife?
9 because
same wife, yes.
Same wife. Just making sure.
So we got Peter at 19 and Esther at 17. They're both graduated. And then Abigail is 15, Rebecca is 14, Benjamin's 12. And then we've got Miriam at 8, Lydia at 6, Ruth at 4, and baby Bethany is 10 months. And then we have Anna in heaven. So that's
Come
the
on.
10.
Yeah. Yes, we love Anna, and we can't wait to see her again. And man, what a journey you guys are on with the whole clan there. And like you said, you're getting them out of diapers and you're launching them out of the home all at once. I mean, this is exciting. I mean, honestly, you guys, some people might be like, oh my God, 10 kids, how is that even possible? You go to their house and it is dialed. It's dialed. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not saying everything in your life is perfect. I'm just saying it's run kind of like a military command center. You know what I'm saying? Like there's platoons, there's battalions, there's commanders, there's lieutenants. It's not your average environment, but actually, even though we grew up in the family of 6, so it's not quite 10, but there is something powerful about those bigger family dynamics, and actually the things it forces at you as parents. I mean, obviously I got 2. I'm over here just West Coast 2 kids life, and but try not to judge. Honestly, but you guys had how many kids before we had 1? And all my brothers text me and said, "Oh, you guys figured it out. Wow, we were nervous. We were nervous."
Samuel, I was looking for the chapter on being fruitful and multiplying. And
Ooh, shoot. Did that verse? Oh, I got served just now. I got served. Yeah, listen. You know, when you really look at the Hebrew and Greek, oh boy, no, I tell you what, it's incredible though to see the goodness of God and how you guys have parented, and your kids are all unique as we experience whether you have 2 kids, whether we had 6 kids growing up. There's uniqueness, there's nuance, there's difference. Not everybody's the same. Everybody's got their own flavor. Yet at the same time, you guys have done a great job helping your kids get to know God, love God. And we could go a few different directions, and maybe we will jump into a few different ones. But why don't we talk about that relationship with God side of things? Because it's one thing to have a bunch of kids. It's another thing to have kids that love Jesus. And you can see that real authenticity in your kids. It obviously is in you guys. It was in our parents. It's in you. But you can see that in your kids. And that's a big deal. And I know every Christian parent wants to see that replicated. So maybe we talk a little bit about that. How do you foster that in your kids, especially when everyone's so unique and everyone connects with God kind of in their own way, you know?
I guess I would think 2 things that I've loved. Like, even when they were younger, Heidi's always done lots of worship with the kids. You know what I mean? Where it's like, hey, just get around a piano. Because what kids, I feel, need to see is, right, they always say kids will catch more, they're more is caught than taught.
Yeah.
And for them to love Jesus, they need to be around you loving Jesus.
Wow. So good.
They have to I mean, I know growing up, some of my memories is, I mean, just waking up and seeing my dad, generally in the bathroom, but in front of that Bible. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? He spent more time in the Word than anywhere else. I mean, I don't think my dad's ever read a nonfiction book since getting saved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he didn't even read a whole lot of even Christian books. You know what I mean? It was just in the Word. It was living out the life. And I think that's a huge part, is just that it is a cliche, but it's also just real.
Yeah.
That they know at home if what you show on Sunday's fake.
Yeah. That's super good.
And
really good.
They're gonna see right through that. They're gonna go, well, mom and dad talk this whole big talk, and church is important to them, or God's important to them, but as soon as we leave church, they change who they are, and they're not they would never, the Friday night them would never show up in church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And,
wow. So
that's where I think it's so important that if you want to teach that, it takes that level of you walking it out and you deciding that, hey, this is who I am. Because I know one thing I've always thought of is just the fact that as parents, the Bible talks so much about generations. And I think Christianity is one of those things where the Bible talks about a blessing that passes down to generations. And one of my big concerns is always that, as I think the Christian faith is one where you can continue to live in the blessing of the past generation, and it will look like you have it all together until you're too old to change it, because your kids have now gone in a new direction and they've stepped outside of that blessing, and you've lost the lineage of your faith in a generation by being too relaxed, by just coasting through, and you're not continuing to develop and foster, and all of a sudden your kids are like, well, yeah, I mean, we go to church, but we just go, right? And
Bro,
that's one of my big fears, is making sure that you're engaged enough to where people, your kids know it's real, but you're continuing to develop that. And I'm challenging myself, because I don't sit and read my word in front of my kids as much as my dad did. You know what I mean? And I get challenged on that all the time, feeling like, man, are they understanding the power of that word to change like I saw in my dad?
Right.
I will say that for Daniel's approach, he is a bring them with as he goes kind of a guy. And so the discipleship of our kids, we've always been intentional about bringing them with us and including them in what we're doing. And so for Daniel, there's a lot of hours of serving at church, and he's passionate. He was a passionate worshiper. He's a passionate sound technician, and so they see that and look at where their hobbies are coming off. They're all bouncing off of yours because they're serving next to him.
Yeah.
And piece of that, and yeah.
That's so good. You know, I think I actually feel like that. I hope that can give some people hope, in the sense of, because I think sometimes when people think, I got to teach my kids about God or the Bible or Christianity, and they feel ill-equipped, they don't feel like they know everything. And actually, it's less about going, okay, I got to set my kids down every morning for like a Bible class. Okay, I mean, is that bad? No, I mean, obviously, as homeschool or in a Christian school, hopefully you are getting a Bible class, or you are getting actually taught and dig into the Word of God. That's all great, but it's much more about just living your life with your kids. Because I think about that with mom and dad. I mean, they would bring up scriptures and they would mention stuff, and they'd kind of bring out God in different things, but it wasn't like we didn't have like some official weekly family like Bible instruction time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like we, other than like our specific schooling, homeschooling like track, but it wasn't like our parents did formal things, but it was like, we're in church several days a week. We're talking about it as we go. We're seeing our dad. Like I would most of the time see dad kind of like maybe asleep on the chair, you know, with the Bible like this. Hey dad, how's the Bible? It's great. It's great. Yeah, it's just peace. The peace of God. God's word is just meditating. It's just putting me to rest, and so I saw a lot of that, but it's like that just, it was more natural, and actually I found it's funny, like as a pastor, a preacher, sometimes I've actually found it's more unnatural to me, or more like nervous. I'm more nervous to try to talk about this walk, this faith, these truths with my kids, because it feels like,
Yep.
how are they going to respond? Do they get it? They're staring at me weird,
Yeah.
And so sometimes I can be nervous, even if it might be feel like, oh, I'm probably easy for Samuel, because he's a preacher.
Yeah.
But it's as nerve-wracking, I think, as just a dad with your kids as it is for anybody, because it's just different, you know what I mean, in that space. And I find that most of the stuff is like, let's talk about it as we go. Let's correct that. Let me pause that show.
I mean,
bring this up.
I think one comment you made there, though, is good for people to understand, is that it's actually harder to teach a topic that people you're talking to know your flaws.
Mm.
When you get on a stage, generally people you're talking to, they don't know all of your mistakes. They don't know that you lost it last night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But your kids do. And so when you read the scriptures, because like every pastor will say, right, the scripture, you don't read the scriptures read you.
Right.
And so when you read the scriptures and with your kids, and it is reading you, it is shining a light on your own flaws, it's super hard to bring up those topics with your kids, because all of us have those flaws, and the Bible will bring them very clearly to the surface.
So do teenagers.
And so do teenagers. Teenagers bring to the surface all of your flaws.
I love it. And you know what? I think that's a good note, though, too, on transparency. There's no sense in pretending with your kids, because they already know, right? So if you are trying to talk about a biblical principle and you don't do great at it, just say that. You know what I mean? Just be honest with your kids. Hey, I'm working on this. Man, I'm sorry I lost it. Hey, I need to forgive. Wow, you know what? I gossiped about somebody. Man, look at me being a bad example of that. You know what I mean? Whatever the case might be, the transparency, I think, is so important versus, well, I just do as I say, not as I do. It just doesn't work,
Yeah. One thing, when Heidi was reading in your book real quick, it referenced shaping arrows. And I think that's such a powerful concept just for people to understand, is that there's everything in that, right? There's everything from teaching your kid how to be soft and gentle, right? Like the fletching on the back, that gives them guidance and direction, but then also teaching them how to be lethal. You know what I mean? As Christians, we want them to be lethal, and there's so much to, like, the time involved, right? That's what we've seen, obviously more so because we have a bunch of kids, but with every kid, there's so many hours that you have to put in, and it's like a stock market that you don't see a total on.
Yeah.
Because you're investing and investing and investing and investing, and you see nothing.
Yeah.
You see little glimmers here and there, but you really don't know the result until years after you did the investing.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that, right, our job, right, as Christian parents is to raise them up so that God can use them.
Yeah.
My opinion is to go kill some demons.
Yeah.
And
on somebody.
That's what we should be doing, right? I don't want to raise lazy Christ followers. I want to raise vicious ones.
Yeah.
And in that we realize that we're putting all this effort into something, but then we hand it over to God, right? And we launch it out there, and we let God do with it what He's going to do with it.
Yeah. That's so good. I love the way you phrase that, Danielle. There was a couple things you said there. I love the way you phrased it, but preparing my kids so that God can use them. I love the kingdom perspective on that. So it's not just raising my kids so they can do what they want to do, or so they can be, whatever the case might be, but raising my kids so that they're actually an effective arrow in the hand of God, to exact his kingdom, his will, his purpose here on earth. And man, what a great perspective. So that, like the subtitle of my book, what the Bible says about raising godly children that are healthy, happy, and successful. Well,
Yep.
let's make sure that's successful. The definition of that is not just, me fulfilling my dreams, or me getting a certain wealth status, or me getting a certain notoriety or whatever, but successful is me fulfilling the purposes of God. You know what I mean? It's doing what God has asked me to do. And if we as parents are sloppy in the raising process, and then God has to take another 10, 20, 30 years to finally iron some things out before he can do anything with them. I mean, what that really minimizes kingdom effectiveness,
Yeah, that's good.
Dude. All right. Well, that's the second edition of the book coming next. Oh, that's so good. We won't take much more time here, but any other just encouragement for parents, thoughts, maybe key lessons, right? With 10 kids, themes that kind of came up for you guys where you're like, wow, here we are again, new kids, same thing. You know what I mean? And just things you had to keep going after. Because I remember, and I'll try to stop talking so I can let you, Heidi, and Daniel talk. But I remember, one of the things our parents are good at is just understanding that parenting is healthy reinforcement and continuing to say the same things over and over again, reinforcing certain things. And so even with our parenting journey so far, if either one of us is like, man, I feel like we've already said this, and it's like, yeah, but this is what it is. You keep saying it. You keep reinforcing. You keep going back to the fundamentals. You keep saying what you said, even if it feels like you're a broken record sometimes. I'm not talking about disobedience, broken record, as in you've told them 10 times and they're not listening. I'm just talking about reinforcing of what matters, But anyway, some maybe final thoughts from you guys on that. Next few minutes, take a few more minutes here.
Yeah. Oh, well, one of my approaches on how to think about it is this discipleship, and how Jesus took the disciples with him everywhere he went. So for me, it starts just from the very little ones. They're with me. And that sounds simple, but I think in our culture, a lot of times there's an escapism mindset, and we need to look at it differently. Then, are we embracing what Jesus would have done? What did he show? And those disciples, they did dumb stuff. They embarrassed Jesus. They got interrupted when Jesus was trying to impart to them. Then he had to serve the crowds, and I always had that little picture in my head of Jesus leading the disciples around, and then I would try to find ways to serve at church where they could be involved, or they could be alongside me at my feet. If I'm making supper, they're there with me. And that's when, as you said, as you go, you teach. As you go, then you begin to discuss things. You listen to a great podcast, you listen to a story, and then you discuss it. Those kinds of walking and talking together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that caught then taught philosophy applies there, right? Because you can put them in front of VeggieTales for hours on end.
Yeah.
But they're going to get more out of watching you go to the grocery store and how you handle the person that took the parking spot in the front row. They're going to have more life and spiritual learning right there than they are from all the videos in the world, because they know your heart. They know it's real.
Yep.
And the big thing to me is just the longevity. Is just the fact that are you
talking about till midnight?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I found as my kids became older is that I thought when I had young kids that was like exhausting.
Yeah.
And then I had teenagers.
Yeah.
And when they were young kids, you're up till 2 a.m. because they're crying. And you just got to walk them, but you don't have to be like mentally cognizant. However, when you've got a 17-year-old, 18-year-old that wants to negotiate world peace with you at 1 a.m, or I should say negotiate wardrobe peace, you have to be like mentally aware at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to lose the battle.
So you're saying psychological warfare is
that's Yeah, there's a lot of psychological warfare. But so I mean, that's, I think, how it kind of just fleshes out over time. But I think the big thing that when we were talking earlier is just, it's as a parent, to your side of like changing your hobbies to let your kids be with you, is the part where it's you dying. And if you're going to try to raise kids but still be the same selfish you that was you before you had kids, they're going to be bad kids, and you're going to be a frustrated parent. You know what I mean? Because
mic dropping. Mic dropping.
They need attention and they need love, and God gave you kids to break you from being the selfish you.
Yeah.
And Heidi and at least I figured maybe I was really selfish. So God took a lot of kids to work me down.
And it's not that you don't have, the things that make you interspersed, but it's just a flip in the lifestyle priorities. And be willing to be flexible in the moment when God says give, it's time to lay down and give.
Because we've all been. Go ahead, Sammy.
No, I'll just say something real quick on the being with your kids. That was an interesting thing here in kind of like San Diego lifestyle. It's a lot of like dinners and lunches and going out and chilling. And it's a lot of parents leaving kids with babysitters. You know what I mean? And it was one of those things where, sometimes, you can't avoid that if you're going out with some day, kids can't be, whatever. But, it's a lot of us going, no, actually, we have kids because we want to have them with us. So our kids are coming or we're not coming. You know what I mean? And so I think sometimes that's okay, because I want my kids in that space. Our kids serve both services with us that were there at church, and so they're in that space, walking that out. They serve in our kids ministry and love hanging with the babies and doing all that. And the toddlers. Mercedes is in the background here. She's saying toddlers. The 5-year-old.
Your girls are both great with children. We love it when they come.
I think Mercedes is less into the diaper changing. Kenzie's started doing more of that with her serving role in kids. So
love it. I love it.
I mean, I know Heidi noted something, or just kind of in there, where you talked about the generation thing, where your kids watching you in all of life. Or the other day we had a situation where I told Heidi, I said, next time we're going to have it was a serve time at church that wasn't as conducive to having kids there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but next time I want you there with some kids, because there were some young parents with some kids that, if you're not from a big family, you've never seen kids raised.
Right.
If you're from 1 or 2 kids, unless you're around some moms or some dads that are with their kids, you might try to raise kids, but you don't have a good example.
Right.
Of the little kid, right? As a teen, you can remember being raised as a middle schooler, high schooler, but you don't remember what it's like to parent.
It's super inconvenient,
embarrassing. To parent a baby. And I feel like in today's culture, I really see a tendency for parents to drop them off at daycare, or I can't come to that event because my kid is going to embarrass me. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, that's life.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It means you're normal.
Right. Yeah.
We need to be a child-friendly culture.
Yeah. And just like you said down there, it's like if you're going to have events that no kids can come to, well, you're also losing the opportunity for the older generation to exemplify to the next generation, or maybe to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, I think you could do that a little different.
Yeah.
Because no one's around you to feed you and to teach you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super good. Really, really important. And I don't always get that right in serving, because sometimes with the role we carry, our kids and us can kind of be going different directions. But I'm always kind of mindful of wanting to make sure that as much as I can, there's a level of us worshiping together. You know what I mean? Like, because I feel like that was a big modeling thing, seeing Dad raising his hands in worship, being around that, watching that, you know.
Yeah.
But I love this, man. This was so good. There's a million things we could talk about. We've already enjoyed a full 30-minute instead of the 10-minute we were going to plan on, but I knew there was no way it's only going to be 10 minutes. So thank you guys for carving out the space. And now you're away from the 10 kids, so you're probably going to go on a date night after this. Head back home. But you guys are exceptional parents. You're really, really great. I appreciate the way you guys lead, demonstrate that. I know for Katie and I, we honor you big time. And I'm not just saying that for the live. You guys really, really are something special. And God's grace is on you for that. And you've modeled it so well. And you might be unique amongst many, and how many kids, or the homeschooling, or certain things like that you have demonstrated and led the way in some different things. But you've also done with grace. You don't have a air about you that's difficult for other families to learn from or grab onto, or to, you know what I'm saying? Like I just feel like you lead with such a great high bar of example, but with so much grace that people don't feel intimidated to learn. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself. You guys are amazing, and really, really love and appreciate you both. So thank you for taking the time tonight.
Hey, well, thank you very much, Samuel. I think it's great to have the book out there, and I think we were reading through it and just saying, I mean, this is good for Christians and non-Christians, right? Because there's so many parents in the church that haven't had it, haven't had the example. And I think it's got a lot of good basics, and
we'll be recommending it.
Yep.
Good.
We will be ordering a couple to give out. So
awesome. Well, thank you guys. I love you. You're amazing. Say hi to the clan, the rest of the kiddos. You guys get back home. We'll talk soon.
We'll see you later.